I want to introduce two boats to you, the SuperSkipper and the SuperSkipper, the SuperSkip RR. And these two boats are effectively identical in all ways except for the volume on the tail. Slight differences in rocker and width, and it's very, very small, the differences on the whole design, so that this one works more effectively with the smaller tail than this one here does with the bigger tail. So for today's purposes, I'm going to call this Fatty and Slicey. So starting with Fatty, which is our main boat here, the SuperSkipper, and there's a lot of stuff going on this boat. Now, we started on this boat 3 years ago, and there's ideas from this boat that have ended up in the Superfly, in the Hammer, in the particle accelerator. Lots of ideas that have come from this that have found their way into other boats that we have on the market right now. So first of all, one of the main things I want to show you here is if you look at the shape of the rocker and you look at the deck shape of how similar those two curves are. Now, the reason for this is you have a boat that has this rocker that wants to come up after it's hit the water, and then you got all this volume in the bow here, and the hull's trying to make it do one thing, and the volume on the deck's trying to make it do another thing, because the hull wants it to do this, and the volume crown there makes it want to do that, and they're kind of working against each other. Yeah, it'll surface quickly, but that's not necessarily what you want. And what we found with this one here is you can drop in almost 80 degrees. That's almost vertical. And as soon as it hits, the water flowing along the bottom of the boat is similar to the water flowing across the top of the boat, and it peels up and it moves forward at the same time, and it shoots out, moving downstream away from whatever the offending hole or feature is that you're trying to skip over. And this is particularly useful with the new big drops that you're plugging, where you don't want to be, landing flat or even at 45 degrees. You want to be penciling in, but then when you pencil in, it then, as you submerge, it then moves forward and away from the feature. Obviously, the main way that people are paddling nowadays is they're just skipping over stuff. And so it's got really high nose rocker. It's not overly wide in the nose, but it's wide enough. It's got a very high nose rocker, combined with this little concave here that we also have in the particle accelerator. And we found that it worked really well, and so that's why we put it in the particle accelerator. As far as when you initially hit, it's this little catch area that helps just start the process of bringing that nose up and around. But then you can look at the rocker shape in the back of the boat, and you see how we have this rocker break where it's literally a break right under the seat, and it's a straight line to the tail. Now, if you have this curved rocker in the tail of the boat, you go over a drop, it hits, and it does this, and it keeps doing this, and it keeps doing this, and it keeps doing this, and there's nothing to stop the boat doing that and ending up vertical, right, or going over. And what this flat surface here does is it goes down, the nose starts to come up, it does this, it hits that flat surface, and it just shoots forward on that flat tail. Now, we experimented with what a few other people have done, where you still have this curve going through the back of the boat, and then that little negative rocker in the tip, and we basically bent boats up and down, and it didn't make any difference. It didn't make any difference. That little negative recurve rocker back there, the only thing we felt was it was a little harder to get the nose up when you were boofing stuff, but it didn't make the slightest bit of difference at the bottom of the drop. But this flat surface area, it hits and it shoots forward. And that really made a difference. And when you look at the videos of this boat, the way it's skipping over stuff. I mean, we had all kinds of the latest, greatest boats from various different people that we've tested against the SuperSkipper, and none of them come even marginally close to just firing out of the bottom of the drops the way that this does. I mean, they all do it well, they all hit and they go whoop, and then they come out, and this thing literally flies across the pools below drops like it's a skipping stone, which is why we called it the SuperSkipper. It's unreal. Now, look at the volume in the end of this boat. This is 92 gallons, the Fatty boat, but it's all in the middle of the boat. We've taken volume out of the ends. Now, it's not that new in the tail. There's more and more boats. We're taking volume out of the back of the boat. But we've really also applied that theory to the nose of the boat as well. And one of the reasons of that is that the new boats are excellent at staying out of holes, right? They just skip over everything. But if you do get in a hole, you can't get out. You're stuck there like a beach ball. And we see more pros swimming more regularly now than we've ever seen before. And there's two reasons for that. One is they're running harder stuff on a more regular basis than we ever ran. So that's a big part of it. But when you get stuck in a hole, you can't get out. There's so much volume in the boat. You're stuck sideways. You cannot manipulate the ends of the boat in a feature to get out of it. And if you've ever paddled a half slice, you know that if you get stuck in a hole, you can kind of drive that tail of the boat in and you can kind of move it forward along the hole and come out the other side. Well, it's the same thing here. This allows you to drive it in a little bit, front or back, and it allows you to at least work your way towards the end of the hole. If you do start to get the ends going, it's going to go a little bit deeper. It's going to be more controlled. If you're cartwheeling in the hole, it's a little bit more controlled event, so you can use that to work your way towards the corner and try and get out. It's not magic, but it does work. We definitely noticed it. The other thing with the smaller tails here is it does allow you to dip the tail if you need to jump over stuff. This boat doesn't require that. It skips over everything. Even if you don't skip, it still skips. But if you do get back-ended, having less volume in the back of the boat means it sits a little bit deeper in the water. You're catching more green that's coming out, and it's more stable. Fat boats all the way to the end here. Once it stands up, it pops you out like that, and you end up sort of in an uncontrolled watermelon seed pop. And having less volume in the end, it makes it more stable and makes it basically more easy to control as you come out. But that brings us over here to the RR. And there's two main reasons for the RR. One is maybe on Saturday, big rain and really flooded river, high volume, big gnarly holes everywhere. You want to be on top of the water at all times, SuperSkipper. Come Monday, the water's dropped, it's a more manageable level, and you want to sport things up a little bit, but you want a boat that's going to handle exactly like the boat that you had. Or maybe you're not so much on a creek, you're on a big volume, difficult river that you want to be controlled and you want to be able to turn the boat on the tail of the boat and maneuver it around, and that's where this comes in. Now, at 180 pounds, I'm not like eddy line squirting, stern stall. There's too much volume right behind the cockpit. The idea of this boat here is I go over a drop, and with the big boat, what would happen to me, because I paddle the glide, the particle accelerator, and the 303 80-90% of the time. So I get in this boat, I go over a drop, or I'm halfway down a rapid, I want to turn left, I drop my outside edge, I sweep, and it goes, and it kind of, and I'm bracing for a second, right? Because I don't paddle as much gnarly stuff as I used to. My ability to switch from slicey to non-slicey boats is diminished. I mean, come lunchtime, I've got a handle on it and I'm doing fine. But for the first couple of hours of the day, I'm bracing more than I should because I keep catching the tail, right? But I can go from this boat, paddle it for a day, and then go to this boat, and it's a smooth transition, even though I'm going from a slicey tail to a fat tail, because everything else about the boats is the same. So I jump in this boat here. I'm going down some rapid, and the nose, I go over a drop, and I want to be going this way, and I just drop the tail, whoop, and I bring it around, and I'm going off in the new direction. And it allows me to paddle this boat the way that I paddle boats every other day of the week. And it's a much more familiar feel. I find that I end up bracing less. And truth be told, I'm not really running that gnarly class 5 stuff anymore. I don't really, on a regular basis, need a boat that's going to look after me and make sure that I come home alive at the end of the day. I'm just not running that kind of stuff anymore. So I can have a boat that's going to be more familiar to paddle, more like my particle accelerator, more like the glide, that I can whip around and I'm familiar with it. And more like the hammer. The hammer it's kind of in between the two. The hammer, you can kind of pivot the tail, but it's not as pivotable as this. So it's more like those boats. But then when my 25-year-old mates are like, hey, let's go run something. It's crazy. It's out of hand. And I just want to come home alive. I just don't want any drama during the day. This bad boy. Because I know that no matter what the river throws at me, when I'm in this bad boy, I'm going to make it down. I'm going to make it through it. I'm going to have a good day. So just like golf, where you have different drivers in your bag, that's what these are here. These are different tools for the same purpose. And because they're so similar in so many ways, it allows you to go seamlessly from one to the other. And the idea of this design is that you have them as a pair. I mean, yeah, you could have just the one or the other if that's what you're doing. But the idea is that you have them as a pair. And so that you have that half slicey but super creaky, rocker, skippy feeling boat, and then that full on, doesn't matter what the river throws at me, I'm skipping over everything, I'm going to be fine at the end of the day version of it. So there you go, the SuperSkipper and the SuperSkipper RR, and I am really excited about this, and I'm also excited because, like I said, we've been working on this for a long time, and we just didn't think that the market was ready for this, these kinds of rockers and, this kind of concept where you're skipping over everything, and now it's time, and I'm excited.